and welcome to another episode of Black Daddy Country Club. Today's a special day. We are at the Village at Mondawmin Mall, and today we are supporting Black Maternal Health Awareness. The event is called Kings and Cradles, and it's sponsored by 92Q Jams, Greater Baltimore Urban League, NCNW, and Morgan State University Center for Urban Health and Equity. And today we actually have two guests with us today, two special guests, Mr. Rashad Mills and Miss Jessica Taylor, both licensed clinicians in the mental health field. And so what we want to do today is discuss what does supporting maternal health look like, and then look at that through the lens of mental health. Why is that individual not able to show up for whatever reason, right? So I want to turn the mic over to Jessica so she can introduce herself to the audience.
All right. Well, my name is Jessica Taylor. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I own Therapy for Black Women. You can find us at therapyforblackwomen.com. We are locally based here in Baltimore. We are licensed, though, in Maryland, D.C., Virginia, and some other places. We are 100% virtual at the moment, and we are excited to serve you. It specializes in Black women, but if you ever have questions about anything else, just hit us up. And so I'm excited to be here. One of my personal specializations is perinatal mental health, along with ADHD and anxiety and things like that. So I'm really excited for the conversation.
And Mr. Rashad.
I'm excited to be a part of this amazing event today. My name is Rashad Mills, licensed clinical professional counselor. Been licensed here in the great state of Maryland for the last 7 years.
Thank you. So just with a little bit of knowledge or information, according to the CDC in 2023, Black women were 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women, which is crazy when you think about it. And so why is that, right? And so this event today is for us as Black men to come together and support Black women, whether it's our sisters, our daughters, our wives, during that process. And so jumping into the questions, right off, what does emotional support look like from a woman's perspective?
It looks like a lot of things. For sure, the word that comes to mind is attunement. So attunement, not to get all clinical, but it's just like being in tune with someone, kind of like picking up what they're putting down, being able to read them, not mind reading, but, I can kind of get a sense of what's going on. So I would say emotional support would look like we already have a familiarity with emotional and feelings, and we already have conversations about this. So now I can say, hey, how you doing? Like, how's it going? And I can not just accept the fine or, and I might ask some follow-up questions, and I might say, well, what does that mean? What do you need? Sometimes you don't need anything when you're getting emotional support. You just need to talk about it. But oftentimes it might mean something practical that you need, like to do some more research, to chat with a specialist. I'm thinking about specifically being in the prenatal space, to be affirmed, to be sharing in, I know we'll probably get more into that later, but to be sharing also into like what emotions potential future dad is also experiencing. I'm saying future like it's his first child, but you know what I'm saying. So the attunement is real. It's like just ask questions, be curious, and don't take that first little answer for the answer. Ask follow-ups. and see if there's anything that that person needs.
What about when it comes to like the doctor's visits, um, being there with your significant other?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, I don't know, a person may not be an assertive person, right? And you couple that with not really knowing the questions
Yeah.
to ask, right? And then that person plays the background, right? And so dealing with that type of personality, you know, how do you maneuver a situation like that,
Well, I think it's important. I want to go back to what Jessica mentioned earlier because you mentioned some great things. And one of the things I think was really important was the question that you asked, what do you need? And I think it's important that an individual, the dad, can say, what do you need as it relates to what the mom needs? Because the mom might not always know what she needs at those particular moments. So dad asking, what do you need? It may look like just emotional support. It may be physical support. It may be the dad actually doing things like calling doctors' offices and things of that nature. And then I think when you talk about one party not being as assertive, I think it's the partnership. So the partnership, the mom can actually say, this is what I need from you. So now mom may say, this is what I need. That's one part of it. And then the other part would be the dad actually asking, what do you need? So both of those needs are getting met, one party or the other. And again, Jessica used the phrase, picking up what you're putting down, right? And I think that's important because it just simply says what? Partnership. And picking up what you're putting down, that's going to vary throughout the course of, this whole ordeal known as pregnancy. Yeah.
So
I have a
go ahead. I'm
follow-up
sorry.
if
Yep.
I can. Okay. When you're dealing with doctors and hospitals and whatnot, there's this power dynamic, and regular not pregnant people go to the doctor's office and forget half the questions that they have, or they don't tell the truth, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't want to. There's this funky dynamic with health providers. We don't want to be like in trouble, but we also don't want to get the test results. It's very funky, right? But I will say, if the two of you are just making some eye contact, you're looking at each other, you're making sure, like, does my partner look satisfied? Does she still have a little confusion on her face? Does he still have a little confusion on his face? Do we need to slow down and like say, hey, can we have 5 more minutes while we think that over? Or can we get a second opinion? Or can you explain that to me like I'm a third grader? Like, those are the kinds of things that if you take back the pace and realize that, not no shade to any doctors, but we're paying you to provide the service for us, like we can take back control of the speediness of how appointments can feel, and it makes you feel like I just gotta get through it, and I don't have any room to speak up. So even if you do feel like you might have it all and you're satisfied, just 2 seconds by yourselves without those people in the room might give you a little space to be able to then advocate for something else.
Yeah.
I have it all and you're satisfied, just 2 seconds by yourselves without those people in the room might give you a little space to be able to then advocate for something else.
Yeah. How does your partner's mental health impact how they show up in a time like this, in an important time like this? If there were already pre-existing, conditions prior to, the pregnancy, now we're pregnant.
Yeah.
That's a lot on top of a lot now,
Yeah.
right? So how does your partner's mental health or mental wellness impact your own emotional, physical experience during the pregnancy?
I think it impacts it greatly because, as you mentioned, if an individual already has some existing mental health conditions, they are not mentally well, individual is now pregnant, so it is going to exacerbate all of those conditions, right? And so what happens now, if I'm not mentally well and I'm in a space of trying to help somebody else through a very, pregnancy can be very difficult for a lot of people. And even if it's a healthy pregnancy, it still requires a lot. So if I'm not mentally well, then I can't show up and be the best version of myself for somebody else that actually needs me probably a lot more than they've ever needed me. So if you're not mentally well, then you can't support somebody who really needs you at a time like being pregnant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And mentally, when we speak of mentally well, to me, and this is just me, it sounds a little harsh when we say mentally well, in my opinion, because mentally well can look anything like a person suffering from ADHD, right? A person suffering from anxiety, and so we're not necessarily, like I said, this is my when I hear mentally well, I think of like, you know, schizophrenia or bipolar or something like that. When I hear that term, and I just want to, you know, I guess make it clear that we all go through something, right? And it could be, you know, something, and I don't want to minimize it, but it could be something like anxiety. It can be something, you know, like ADHD, you know, where you don't know your left from your right. You don't know where you're going, you know, which makes it hard to focus, makes it very hard to be organized in a situation where you have to be or should be organized, right? So I just wanted to say that, you know, because it was just hitting me a certain way. I had to say that.
Let me just jump in for one moment. That's a great point. Just for clarity purposes, when I say mentally well, that's a relative term based on that person. So mentally well can look different, you know, for everybody. So thank you for clarifying that. But it's just relative to each person and their own experience.
Yeah.
It's everything, right? My partner's mental well-being, pregnancy, labor, delivery, postpartum, forever, because we're this child's parent forever. So it's going to be impacting me forever. But in this phase, absolutely, you know, we have these dynamics where sometimes I'll dysfunctionally be quiet about my stressors or my depression or my anxiety because I don't want that person to be impacted. I don't even want them to be worried about me or burdened by me. And that can happen because she's pregnant and I don't want to stress her out no more, you know, or she may be doing the same thing because she has observed something in her partner and is trying to, you know, allow him to have the smoothest journey as possible. But I would say that ideally, both people have the supports and the mental wellness and the, you know, providers and therapists that they need so that they are getting support outside of this partnership, and then the partnership is a healthy space to be able to have these conversations. So nobody has to do any funky contorting and brushing anything under the rug. Like, we can have a conversation about whatever we need to have. We can do it, and the conversation itself is not, it's more manageable when I already have skills in place. Now, everybody doesn't already have skills in place. And so getting into therapy when you get the news or when you get the news of the second pregnant, whatever, it's never bad. It's always helpful. I have many clients who, you know, hit me up because they're pregnant or they just found out they're pregnant or they, you know, experience a loss or want to be, whatever. It's a trip, okay? And like mentally, you have all these hormones and things physically racing through your brain is different. So a mentally well partner is everything. And if everybody needs to go ahead and see the therapist, the prescriber, you know, get what you need to get, because the pregnancy will pregnancy, like the life will life and everything. Like it is what it is, and you can be helped by getting that support before things get like hard.
Jessica, I think you just coined a new phrase. I might have to put on a T-shirt and market it. The pregnancy will pregnancy.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Making some money off of that one. What are some things, and this is addressed to the both of you, what are some things that you wish that Black men understood more deeply about, you know, the maternal journey, mentally, emotionally, physically, about that process?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I think that that it's more manageable than what we believe, right?
Okay.
So from my experience being a father and many of my friends' experience, it can be very overwhelming for fathers,
Especially for your first time.
first time fathers, and sometimes it doesn't even feel manageable because so many things that you're thinking about. And I think that I think it's so important for fathers to know that it's manageable and we can compartmentalize every phase of it and putting things in its proper perspective and one foot in front of the other one, because it just feels so overwhelming. And this plays into another part of it. If you didn't have these great fatherly experiences to kind of guide you in terms of what it looks like, the emotions that you may experience, it can feel very overwhelming and a daunting task. And then the emotional part of it, no one ever told me emotionally what I would go through as a father expecting. And it's okay for us as men to actually be vulnerable and say, man, this is what I'm going through. Because right, historically, if we say that, it's like, man, you're being selfish. Jessica's pregnant. You can't have these feelings. It's about mom. Mom is with baby. So you can't experience these feelings. I can. So if that's the biggest takeaway for me, would be to let guys know that it's okay to be vulnerable and have your own set of emotions. And if you choose to express them, you're not being selfish.
It's a big question.
It is a big question. I laid it on you. It's a big question.
Because I think when I heard it, the biggest thing that I was thinking about was that we would love for them to see it as a manageable by itself, like it's all right, and but also be not quite as invested. I don't know if that's the right word, as invested, but like own it, like it's your journey as well, and we would love to go through this thing collaboratively, as opposed to there's a lot of deference. You know what I mean? Like we were saying earlier, I'm gonna just whatever kind of formula you want, whatever kind of doctor you want, whatever kind, and there's a million decisions to be made, along the way, and so all the deference can be maybe how your relationship has been, or maybe how y'all work things out in certain areas. But with this one, I think there's just more space for fathers to be like more involved. There's so much to know, and sometimes the deference turns into this imbalance of thought labor for mom, and then it's like, I know all the things, and you just ask me how to do all the things. When the baby gets here, you know what I mean? As opposed to like, we both know enough. We both, maybe I jam out over here, you jam out over here, but like it's more equitable, and then there's more trust, and then there's more, But the knowing, kind of understanding more about what her body is experiencing, know more about, like, when I heard the stat around how many calories you burn, like you're burning like 2.5 times the normal amount of calories when you're breastfeeding. So just like knowing certain things like that might help him be able to, like replenish your little basket. Oh, I get why you're falling asleep. Knowing how sleep deprivation is going to affect the both of y'all, like we don't have to become doctors, but being engaged, like following accounts, talking to your dad friends that are already dads, like just not it all being her having to teach you, or her having to, yes it is, like her having to be like the authority, and that like do this in community and do it more collaboratively. I think that would be great for everybody. Yeah.
And what you just said about doing it in community is one of the reasons, really the reason why this podcast exists, right? So that Black fathers can learn from one another, right? But also along the learning journey, of being able to, just I don't know the term that I'm looking for. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember the term that I'm looking for. But just to be able to build the camaraderie with one another, whether it's golfing or smoking cigars or whatever. But the community is there, right? the non-biased, non-judgmental, just let it all out. You know, you could say one thing, and this brother be like, well, brother, my experience was a little different. Maybe this is, what your partner was feeling, or maybe you can try this next time when this situation arises, and that's really why Black Daddy Country Club exists today. But moving along, my iPad keeps closing up on me. I keep putting in the code to open the iPad. So we talked a lot about mental health and like being able to show up mentally for your partner, right? So the next question is kind of diving more into that, and it's how does unprocessed traumas in Black men affect their ability to emotionally support their partner during a pregnancy?
Well, if it's a trauma that's been unprocessed, they are unaware. So they are acting, I won't say acting, but there may be things that happen, like from a behavioral standpoint, that they may engage in that they're unaware of it because it hasn't been processed in their world. So in their world, it's a norm, right? But now that norm is affecting who? That's affecting mom, and it's affecting mom, and it's affecting baby. And so it can show up in a lot of unhealthy ways if they don't know what they're experiencing. This goes back to this idea of the question, I think 2 questions ago, the impact of, as Jessica stated, both parties being in therapy even prior to, mom knowing that she was pregnant. I think that's a great point. But if mom didn't know it then it's like, okay, now I'm pregnant, and we both need to be in individual therapy. There's an opportunity for us to be in therapy together, because a dad that's just unaware of what he has experienced and he hasn't processed those things, now he's just unfortunately and unintentionally displacing that on to a mom, and then again it impacts a mom, and it impacts someone else. One of the things from my own experience I always think about was my own level of anxiety, which I never processed prior to my kids actually being born. So there was things that came up when mom was actually pregnant, and now I'm anxious, and behaviorally I'm acting out from this very anxious space, and now mom is feeding off of my anxiety because I never processed that. I didn't actually get into therapy until my kids were probably about 5 or 6. And so I always reflect back and say, man, if I was in therapy prior to my kids being born, I could have, saved mom a lot of heartache just based on when she had to deal with my anxiety about different things. So I think it's just important to understand that when we don't process our stuff per se, we unintentionally displace it onto mom.
So I didn't make this up, but a fish doesn't know it's wet. So when someone does try to point something out to you, and you don't know that this thing that you're doing is a thing, it's like, oh, why you tried to change me? Okay, that was not right. I did the stereotypical man voice, but
I saw that you kind of switched. I didn't want to say anything, by the way.
My bad. I'm used to talking to ladies all the time. But you know what I mean? Like, we take it as a personal attack as opposed to when we learn about concepts and we learn about behaviors, sabotage, codependence, whatever, enmeshment, whatever we're talking about, when we learn about these things, then it's like, oh, we can identify the thing and address the thing as opposed to you feeling chopped down. Because when it's pointed out and you have no clue how to fix it, you just feel demoralized. Like, now you want to avoid it. Now I don't even want to, because you go tell me I'm doing it wrong. So therapy. Yeah. Because it's really a gift to you as a man, as a whomever, but it's first a gift to you, and then it is a definitely going to be a gift to your child to be the healthiest you can be.
Let me just jump in and say something. When you use the term chop down, that was really important, because if a man feels that he is chopped down, so if mom says, well, you're not doing these things, and you mentioned now my masculinity is quote unquote attacked because she chopped me down, And then most men, we can get into the space of, man, she just disrespected me as a man. I'm not a good father. And that just leads down, a really, really unhealthy rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But again, that goes back to a lot of our unprocessed trauma. So if we were in therapy and we were able to say, you know what, she's not saying that I'm not a good dad or I'm not a man. She's just highlighting some things that maybe I can do a little bit better, or the blind spot, right? She sees my blind spot. I'm not privy enough to see my own blind spot. Then I can be a healthier dad.
So do you think it takes therapy to realize something like that? Because when I'm hearing it, the first thing that I think of is maturity versus immaturity, right? That was a mature way of thinking about that. Like, maybe she's not, chopping me down. Maybe she's just, like you said, pointing out some flaws that could, be better, right? But I want to throw this at y'all, right? A freshman in college, 19 years old, having his first child, right? The brain, and I'm not a mental health specialist. I don't know if the brain is fully developed. I don't know. But I know that at 19, I wasn't as mentally mature as I am now at 41, right? That's a whole nother different dynamic now, because we've been, sitting here and assuming that the people that we were talking about were adults. But there are a lot of children out there having children, whether it's high school or even college, right? So that's a whole nother dynamic. So that's why I brought up the question, because when you were speaking, what popped in my head was maturity versus immaturity, right? And do you think that we necessarily need, as we get older, do we need a therapist to point that out to us, or is there just a certain point in time in our lives where we're just mature enough to be like, what, let me just take a step back? And
if you have had people, parents, aunties, coaches that have sort of taught you how to be introspective, how to be self-reflective, how to say, oh, how could I be perceived another way, or empathetic, that type of thing, then no, you don't necessarily need to go to therapy to learn those. A lot of people do, though, because it hasn't been broken down in that way. Like we're raised, our parents do the best they can, but even they don't have all the language, all the time, unless they just happen to be those types of parents. But it's less about therapy and more like, do I have any hooks to hang this on? Do I know what it's like to hear feedback and be not so defensive, be curious about that, you know what I mean? But most of us, a lot of us have not been taught how to communicate and collaborate, especially in partnership with a pregnancy and all that, so not necessarily, but it would be great. And then if you are 19 though and pregnant, please go to therapy. Like, it's hard. It's about to be
you place
hard.
emphasis, please.
It's about to be even harder.
You might want to look at the camera.
Everybody.
Say that one. Yeah. Please. Please.
You go ahead.
No, I don't think it's a need. Like you need to go to therapy, but I think that it would definitely expedite the process of maturation. So you talk about immaturity versus maturity. That comes a lot of times with not just time, but time and different experiences.
Yeah.
However, and obviously I'm biased as a therapist, but I do think that seeing a biased individual like a therapist with just the set of trained ears to listen, eyes to see certain things, it could definitely expedite that maturation process greatly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that kind of that kind of leads into the next question is and you kind of answered it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is how can therapy help Black men reconnect with their own emotions?
Allow yourself to be vulnerable. So when we talk about Black men and emotions, historically Black men, we're not just going to sit down and tell you our life stories and Emotions is something, it's like, it's always been a stigma in terms of being emotional, right? And we know what those stigmas are. Many of those still exist, even though we're making a lot of progress. But allow yourself just to be vulnerable enough. And you allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to say, I'm going to give this a try. I don't have an idea what the outcome of this is going to be that I'm going to therapy, but I'm going to allow myself just to try it out and see what it's like. And many of my clients, specifically Black males, that I could tell there's a lot of resistance on the intake. They're looking at me, who is this guy? And I'm, man, just try it out. Like literally just try it out. So I think you can connect with your emotions, just giving yourself the opportunity to be vulnerable. Yeah.
Men and women sometimes come into therapy and they are so disconnected from their emotions that we are learning how to do it. So we are like literally learning, looking at the feelings wheel and learning the words and what they mean, and that there's more than angry, happy, sad, and kind of growing my vocabulary through the help, with or without the therapist. There's plenty of books. You know what I mean? There's plenty of things that you can do outside of therapy to sort of grow in this area. It helps. Of course, therapy helps. But I use the example of like, there's a difference between I'm happy and I'm optimistic and I am proud, or a difference between I'm angry and I'm violated and I'm repulsed. These are very different, you know what I mean? And so wherever you are, it's helpful to grow in that area, because you deserve the rich language that comes with it, and it really is amazing to be then able to communicate it to someone else, your partner. It helps you to identify, why am I so angry today? Why am I, we say feeling a type of way, or got an attitude, or emotional. Those mean nothing. You have to like identify a little bit more. That will help you to be able to get your need met, to go to sleep at night, to pick up that phone and communicate to whomever you need to. And of course, in this conversation, it's going to help everyone to be able to communicate and not bypass something, not just skip right on over it, And I would say that it's sometimes a little bit of a worthiness thing when people don't want to go to therapy, or they kind of feel like my stuff is not worth it, my stuff is not that bad. I don't know. It's kind of like, you really do deserve the gift. You really do deserve to take the time. It does take work. It can be difficult, right? It can be kind of an uphill in the beginning, but it's going to benefit you so much. You're going to be with you to the end of time, and you deserve to have a lighter, richer experience. There's more to there's more to life than work, back home, eat, So that's my not so short answer.
I'll take that. Take it to heart. Moving into like learned behaviors, right? A lot of us do what we do. We know what we know because of what we saw growing up, right? Whether you were raised by both parents being in the household and you saw your father being a supportive father, you know what that looks like, right? If you grew up in a single parent household, maybe your dad wasn't there, that's going to affect how you show up later on in life, right? And by no fault of your own. And I know we've been discussing and talking about traumas per se, right? But there's another side of that. That's the learned behaviors, right? So speaking on the learned behaviors, how does what a Black man witnessed in his household growing up, or didn't witness for that matter, shape how he thinks he should show up during a time of pregnancy, right? And immediately when I hear that, I think of fight or flight,
Yep.
right? Some people are either going to show up or they going to run, right? So could you speak on, I guess, what that looks like or the importance of or the intricacies of learned behavior?
Well, in your question, you gave a part of the answer as well, and that really is you model what you typically see. So if you're growing up in whether it's a two-parent household or a single-parent household, you model what you see and what you think it's actually healthy. Now, if that dad isn't present, then what do you model? You model what you think, or you model what you see from another perspective, looking at it from another lens. That could be someone else, their version of dad. Now, to be very honest, I was just having this conversation with someone recently. I didn't grow up with a dad in my house, right? My dad was locked up for the majority of my life, so I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't have a model of that. And so when I became a father, and I say this now, and I'm comfortable saying it, but I was literally winging it for the first few years of my kid's life because I didn't have a model of what that actually looked like. Nobody showed me how to show up for mom, how to a degree. If I wasn't showing up for mom, then in essence, I wasn't showing up for my kids. Now, it's very interesting because my father was incarcerated for a period of off and on 30 years. He actually taught me without teaching me how to show up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I began to do is I said I didn't want my kids to experience what I experienced. So when dad wasn't present for Little League baseball games, in different events like that, I made it my business to show up, not just for games, but to show up for the PTAs and to be there every day and not just be what I call a Super Bowl dad. And there's nothing wrong with Super Bowl dads. Super Bowl dads are just, you make it for the big events, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's great. You're still present nonetheless. But I wanted to be the everyday dad, right?
Because you remember how you felt.
Because I remember what it was like for me not having a dad come to a baseball game or a PTA. And so if you can see somebody modeling a behavior and it's a good behavior, then it's great. But my father modeled what not to do by his absence.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, It does. How can we encourage each other? How can we encourage intergenerational conversations amongst Black men? Personal story for me. That's why I like hanging out at the golf course, Forest Park, right? I've been going there now I guess I've been playing golf for like 10 years now. And so I frequent, and if you don't know, you go to a golf course, you're going to see a lot of old Black men, right? You're going to get some good advice. You're going to get some not so good advice. It's going to be a fun time nonetheless. I'll tell you that. But and so that whole intergenerational aspect of seeking out guidance from your elders, right? I never forget Mr. Lou. Mr. Lou, he was the starter up at Forest Park. He was a Kappa, by the way.
Sorry to hear that, by the way.
Mr. Lou was my guy. That was my dude. Rest in peace, Mr. Lou. But me and him would just sit and talk. It would seem for like an hour or 2 hours, right? And he would just talk about, a lot about his college days, but a lot about, his daughter and his grandson. And I learned a lot from him, and partly what you said, like what to do and what not to do based on what he was what he was saying, telling me about his mistakes in life and whatnot. But that learned behavior here is a real thing.
It is.
I grew up watching the Cosby Show, like so many other. I didn't have 2-parent household. I grew up with my dad, right? So I didn't see the feminine energy in the household at all. On top of that, he was a Marine too, so it was just like it was hardcore, hardcore in the house.
You went basic training your whole
life.
life.
Basic training every day from the moment you wake up. But so yeah, there was a dynamic that just was not there, right? And he had his his views on life and how things should go, and the man's role and the woman's role. And I would hear it. I would take it in. I'd listen. But something just sometimes just didn't set right with me. Like, I don't know about that, Pops. I don't know, right? But that goes back to, like I was saying before, the learned behaviors, because a lot of what I do is because, right? A lot of the ways that I show up for my daughter or raise my daughter is because of how, he raised me, right? Or how he showed up for me. Just going back to that, I hate to beat a dead horse, just going going back to, the learned behavior part of it. It's very important to surround yourselves with people who can help you, people that you can learn from, no matter how old you are. You're 19 in college, surround yourself with knowledgeable older people. And even as we get older, go hang out at the golf course, man. Pick a 75, 80-year-old man's brain.
They love to talk.
They love to talk. And they got stories. Lots
For
of
days.
them. For days. But yeah, just, surrounding yourself with the support that you need. And once again, the shameless plug, another reason why we started Black Daddy Country Club, to surround ourselves with like-minded men and it can create that community, of support that is needed. What would your younger self have needed to see be modeled in order for you to show up more effectively, be more present during your child's pregnancy?
I think just understanding what the importance of showing up actually looks like, right? Showing up in any way possible to help the mother of my twins, right? Being, whether it's from an emotional standpoint, a financial standpoint, time standpoint, right? Understanding responsibility, understanding what healthy disagreements look like, right? In that process, and then understanding that even after the kids were born, right? Understanding that any stress that I put on her, then it makes it harder on my kids. I wish I'd have known that, right? At a much younger age. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what would a young lady want to have known? Like, what should she have known? Whew. Too many things, all the things, but specifically around like pregnancy and partnership.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's all intertwined. What would you have wanted to see for you modeled?
Yeah.
Just being a young Black girl, what would you have wanted to see modeled in your earlier, younger ages?
Yeah.
That would potentially help you show potentially help you show up as an adult now, right? Whether it's for yourself, for your family, for your kids.
Transparency would have been amazing. But I don't think that transparency was valued. In fact, we don't tell nobody what's going on. What you talking about? Even inside the family, auntie and uncle such and such been doing this funky thing, or they've been doing great, but they still don't necessarily tell you how they did it, and or what they learned, or all their resources, or other struggles, and what they overcame, and to help you avoid the next thing. I don't know how y'all's family is, but some families, it's just like the surface level stuff when you see each other, and then high school, and you got your girlfriend, you know what I mean? And then not the depths. So to your last question about intergenerational conversations, it would be great if there was more transparency and there was a little bit more time and space and safety to be transparent. And I think that would require that dad or that auntie, that whomever, valuing the time and the space. There's so much that we just think our kids pick up by osmosis or by example, but they need to hear you tell the stories, and probably again and again, you know. But talking about the struggles and the this is and the, you know, when you become an adult, you go back. Not you go back. You like get up to that level, and they start telling you the real deal. Like, oh,
Yeah, I've run into a couple of those stories.
So
That's what really
I got
happens.
another cousin.
I found out I'm from Canada. Shoot.
Exactly. And so, you know, it's like you have to wait until you're already 20 years into it, or however long, you get what I'm saying, before somebody keeps it real. And you could have avoided some stuff.
Absolutely.
You could have learned some lessons. You could have good and bad, right? Like positive and negative is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So if there was more transparency, you would also not think you were recreating the wheel. You would also not think like, well, I got to get it together. And especially if I'm young and I maybe get pregnant on that younger side, male, a guy or a girl, it's like, you made that baby, go ahead and, you know, there's almost this like, go figure it out, as opposed to, well, in our community, that
I was about to say
that can be there. Not everybody, but
it's there a lot though.
It is, and you do not have to figure it all out by yourself. If you're actually under 18, you're a whole child. You still need community. You still need, and the community is there, whether it's through Black Daddy Country Club, whether it's through other organizations, community. So when a young person has the courage to open up and ask a question, it would be great if I had that transparency or just permission, and again, safety, to know I could actually ask, and I wouldn't be, I don't know, laughed at, you know, minimized, dismissed, or whatever. You know what I mean? That would have been great.
This discussion has been great. I think it was a discussion that was needed. How can we as Black men show up? Bottom line, show up, right?
Yeah.
Today we're talking about supporting Black maternal health, right? I think the gist of it is showing up. How do you show up, right? There's a lot of resources out there, you know, if you need help, but being present, right? We talked about being introspective, right? Being able to take a step back. Rashad, you and I talked before, I told you that's why I love golf, because it forces me to slow down, take a step back and reevaluate things, right? And I'm still learning, right? I'm still learning, not golf, I'm still learning to do that, to take a step back, you know, take a step back and reevaluate things. But it's very important, you know. And so I would like to thank the both of you for being here today and participating in this conversation, this much needed conversation at the Kings and Cradles event here at Mondawmin Mall. And thank you.
Thank you for having us.
This has been another episode of Black Daddy Country Club. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe to the channel. This way you will stay updated on new releases, upcoming events, and the latest in merch. And don't forget to share with a friend, blackdaddy.com.